we are joined now to discuss, well, and we mentioned it this morning in terms of the survey out of the PSA, the latest media hysteria that's going on about the health system. And not an unusual move because it's its job. The Taxpayers Union has come out and said, look, the PSA is just spinning you a line on the healthcare and problems in the healthcare system. We're joined now by Jordan Williams. Jordan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sean.
Well, it's not uncommon for unions, which are all aligned one way or another, it seems to me, with the Labor Party. And as Simeon Brown said, the PSA run by a failed Labor Party candidate. What is it that you think is so unusually egregious about what they're saying about healthcare?
Well, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And what really caught our attention was the front page of yesterday's Wellington Post, where it talked about the immeasurable harm of the health cuts and ran as a pull quote a quote from Fleur Fitzsimmons, who was the title always changes, but the national coordinator, I think now, of the Public Service Association. As you say, they've done a survey saying, how harmful are the cuts. And look, I'm first to acknowledge, in fact, I think that's a huge problem facing the government, that there are some very real crises in the delivery of our health service. It's a totally national system. It's turning out to be a disaster, and successive governments have made it worse, not better. But to say that there are cuts is simply factually wrong. Since 2023, the overall funding's increased by 4%. If you adjust by population and by inflation, still the amount of money the government is putting into health has increased since it was elected. And it is simply dishonest to continue to repeat. Simply repeating it does not make it true. There are not cuts in health, and what the government is doing around back office bureaucrats and reshuffling things, I'd argue, don't go nearly far enough, but sacking some people to redistribute that money into other areas is not cuts. And I think that the PSA are actually doing not just politics and public policy, but they're doing New Zealand as a disservice. And frankly, Stuff should be ashamed that they didn't do the most basic fact check of their headline on yesterday's...
Stuff should be ashamed, but consumers of Stuff will not be surprised, Jordan. We put this together with the other thing that Simeon Brown ripped into them yesterday, PSA. They supposedly do a survey that shows 85% of health workers in New Zealand are seriously concerned about the cuts that we've already established don't exist. And the basic numbers that Simeon gave out were amazing. 90,000 health workers, they got 900 responses. So that itself...
Yeah.
So the whole story, we've got two absolute falsehoods put together in a story that's run by Stuff, Wātea News, Radio New Zealand, Scoop, and who knows who else. It's just all lies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... I'm not pretending that there's not major issues in health. There is. Total reorganisation during a pandemic failed. I speak to countless health professionals and have family that work in health, and actually it's falling apart. I was told by a senior anaesthetist last week that 10 years ago she wouldn't have said that you need health care insurance. She says in New Zealand you're mad if you and your kids don't have health care insurance. That really she told me she used to be really proud of our system, but the hospital she works at, they just don't know who's in charge. There's no one to make decisions. The medical, it's the result of a decade of a ministry that have been determined not to trust medical professionals with management decisions. I think that there's real crises there. So I'm not saying nothing to look at, but I actually think that, and you're not broadcast, so I think I don't get in trouble for saying it, but this bullshit narrative being put about by some that Wellington is
I'll
subject
get in
to all
trouble
these
because
cuts.
we've got certain standards that we apply, and that is that we don't use that word.
Okay,
Okay?
I won't use it again, Sean.
Okay,
I
BS is
apologise. This
okay.
nonsense on this
Nonsense.
BS from the PSA and the media and the lackeys, because the average New Zealander would probably think that this government's cutting spending. It's not.
It's simply
The numbers do
not
not
true.
lie.
Okay, what can you do about it? You can complain to the BSA. You can complain to the Media Council. I haven't seen any corrections this morning about this. I haven't seen corrections about the BS nature of the PSA survey that was publicised by Leah Fitzsimons and all over Wātea News. Why don't you, on behalf of your members, complain? Get the media to correct this stuff.
Well, great minds think alike. The nonsense was repeated on the broadcast edition, and I think on because they have a little TV show at 6 o'clock on TV3.
Yeah.
We may well get a broadcasting standards there, but you'd be astounded. You'd be astounded with just how captured a lot of these. The press council. For instance, just how politically captured they now are. And it is a result of an industry where the vast, vast majority are on the self-identify as the left of politics. And they look at the world differently. And when you combine both that and, frankly, just the lack of professional standards, the lack of an insistence of balance and from management in Radio New Zealand land, etc. The combination of the two means, of course, you end up with a society where the fourth estate is no longer trusted.
Could I suggest, Jordan,
really
you also
me.
listen to Dale Husband's Wātea News interview with Leah Fitzsimons yesterday, which is just outrageously poor journalism.
Well, Wātea News actually used to be among the best sort of public funded areas of the media. I used to love going on, slightly different obviously, but I used to love going on Māori television because they would strive to provide both sides of stories. But I think that's well and truly gone now.
Yeah. Jordan, one other change in media while we're talking about it yesterday, a guy called Jim Grennan, who lives in New Zealand. He's a New Zealand resident, Canadian originally, and I think sort of hedge fund billionaire. Bought a big hunk of the Herald yesterday. What is all that about? Or NZME, the company that owns the Herald.
Well, I wish them. I should declare I have a very modest shareholding in NZME. I wish them, Jim, and presumably he's talking to others, the best of luck, because it really hacks me off that NZME keep turning down revenue because, and I actually said, ironically, I understand it's the head of commercial, picks and chooses political topics that they will and won't publish on. I got the most condescending email 2 days before Christmas, or 2 working days before Christmas last year, when the Taxpayers Union had tried to do a full-page ad in the Bay of Plenty Times on that outrageous decision that where Mahi Drysdale had the casting vote to appoint unelected